ultimately, it's up to you.
Yeah, hello. Welcome, friends. This is Chris Jansen. This is the End Evil podcast. Evil is a destruction of freedom. I started the End Evil podcast, I don't even know how long ago. It's been a couple years at least. and I should find the start date because we're probably getting to some awesome anniversary. But I'm trying to every day mix it up and bring some new content and material to folks out there, streaming to YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter. I'm still having some trouble with Odyssey. One day I'll get that worked out. But lots of great and evil stuff to check out. If you go to my End Evil podcast, you can find me on your favorite podcast player, and you can download MP3s there. You can go to endevil.life, and you can check out lots of the past shows and links. You can find a link there to join Autonomy. You can find a link there to check out the One Great Work Network. There's so much awesome community in the One Great Work Network. And even in the End Evil podcast, we've got a Telegram group that's just every day people are posting and audio messages and sharing graphics. And we got that going on in Freedom Under Natural Law too. Check out freedomundernaturallaw.com. But this week is a special week. I've been working towards this for a while. I was dealing with some technical issues in the past, but I am now to the point where I'm happy to say where I think I can stream a quality video to you folks and bring in some live guests. And we're doing it live today. And so if you're out there in the comments, I might be a little slow to respond, but I love seeing people to share in the comments in the chat. I just see Rick's in there, and we got Sewing Class with Sarah Cross. Hey, Sarah. And we got Truth in Your Heart. That's Jim. And who else we got here? Everything's flat under the sun. That might be, I don't know. Everybody's got their own little YouTube insignia, but I'm going to bring in some close friends, some folks that have showed up to be part of this conversation with me today. I got two awesome gentlemen waiting here in the waiting room. I got Will Keller and James Cordner, and I'm going to bring them in, and we're going to start this conversation off about suffering and what is suffering. And why do we have to experience of it? How much do we have to experience of this? Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome. Thanks for coming to the show. Appreciate it. James,
what's up, Chris?
Introduce yourself first. Tell us a little bit about your show.
My name is James Cordner. My show is A Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth. You can find it YouTube, everywhere, really, Spotify, everywhere in between. Been at this for a while now. Happy to be back with you, Chris, and Will, of course. You know, it's like a little blast from the past, the three of us together again. So this is exciting. But yeah, I like doing a live stream myself every Saturday night for the most part at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's always fun. So I'm excited to be here. So let's get it going.
Right on. Thanks for joining us, James. And we got the wonderful Will here. Will Keller, thanks for joining us.
What's up, Chris? My brothers.
See ya.
Thanks for having me on, man. It's a pleasure. It's always great to see both your faces. So I'm glad you guys are doing good, and I'm excited for this.
Yeah, we've been having some great conversations in the One Great Work Warriors. And these guys I meet with them every week. And a lot of times the way we get into these conversations is one of us is dealing with some difficult aspect of life or a conversation with someone we know and struggling with one of these topics. And we'll bring it before the group and we'll all discuss this topic, and it'll turn into a video where we'll all do some research and we'll bring in some slides. And we had this last time, Brandon Spencer put together this incredible video. He added a bunch of slides, and it was fantastic. And it was called, Is Manufactured Suffering Necessary? And what we were talking about was not just suffering, because we know there's suffering. There's some aspects of suffering that are inherent in this existence. But our question really was, like, is manufactured suffering necessary? Does it have to be as bad as it is? And we can explore this topic as deep as you folks want to go. But that's basically where we started. So I'll start it off with Will. Do you got any comments on what I was just talking about there?
This is a fantastic topic. I mean, I like to jump things off simple and kind of define our terms of, what is suffering? How I look at suffering, I actually make um, the delineage of pain versus suffering, right? I mean, the Buddha said that life is suffering, and I disagree with that. Life contains suffering, but actually, the natural modality of life is pain. So, what is suffering? Suffering is when the pain gets unbearable, when it is continuous and continual. The actual the etymology of suffering, I think it's sufare, and what it means is a continual allowing pain. That's what the actual etymology is. So really, if you look at what suffering is, it's when pain gets out of control, but there is an allowance. There's almost consent. It's almost self-induced. So to your point, manufactured suffering, yeah, that's definitely a thing. That's something that the social engineers do, but that's strictly based upon ignorance, ignorant people's ignorance of self knowledge and themselves. So they are in a continual process of experiencing pain, yet they are unconscious of the causal factors of why they are experiencing pain. Now, and we can multiply this in the aggregate. And, this is exactly what all three of us talk about. We talk about the causal factors of why there is human suffering. And the social engineers absolutely understand this, and they play off the ignorant of the masses to their benefit.
There's Leslie.
Hey, we got another friend here. Welcome, Leslie. Let's see what screen's going to work out the best here. Oh, there we go.
Sorry, I'm late.
Yeah, that was really beautiful. Were you done there, Will, or did I interrupt you by popping in Leslie?
Perfect.
Thanks. That was well put.
Thank you.
Oh, and we had Crip Rick making some good comments, and that was Jonathan, by the way. Everything's flat under the sun, who's in the comments there. We got a lot of great people. Angela Greens looks like she's also helping stream this as well, which is awesome. But thanks for joining us, Leslie. Leslie Powers, she is also a One Great Work Network content creator, and her website is alivethrive.life. And you're looking lovely tonight. Thanks, Leslie, for joining us.
It's good to be here with you wonderful folks.
Did you catch into the end of what Will was saying there?
Not really. I apologize.
So I'll catch you the next time around. Yeah. But James, did you want to jump off of what Will was talking about there?
I really enjoyed how you brought causality into the mix, because that is, when it comes to manufactured suffering, that's where my mind goes. It's like, well, what's the cause of it? What's the effect of it? Why? The ultimate question is why, right? Manufactured suffering. Why would anyone want to do that? If we're going to have natural suffering where, we go through life, our actions affect one another. Sometimes there's positive outcomes. Sometimes there's negative outcomes, whatever. We try to mend the wounds and move on the best we can in a natural way. But when we're manufacturing this suffering, like when it's needless, in my opinion. And, where you're talking about, how did you put it? You basically, these incremental steps into this control structure, I forget now how you put it, because Leslie coming in, the look on her face I'm on, but with the water. But anyways, I really enjoyed what Will was saying about that. And I for the most part, I think I agree with what he was saying, but it definitely needs to be brought to a causal level for sure. And to be asking, like I said, like the why would anyone want to do that? And it is for control. It's to keep people down. It's the largest part of it. Sorry, I'm a little distracted at the moment, but
that's all good. I had a new thought this weekend, since as I said, me and the Warriors discussed this a few weeks ago, and then we did our recording on it. And after that recording, just this last weekend, I was spending some time with Leslie, and I was having some back pain, and I was dealing with some pain there. And then I had this other thing going on with my eye that was kind of bugging me. And, it kind of gets me thinking about, getting old is one thing. There's going to be certain aches and pains, but then there's like actual pain we feel in our body from actual things we did. Like I've done a lot of work over the years that uses my back, and I try to use my back well, but it does have a pushing point where it starts hurting, right? One of the worst pain or frustration I felt in my physical body is poison oak. And poison oak is a scary thing for me because I've had some serious, like, that itchy pain has driven me to the point of even thinking suicidal kind of thoughts. And I've asked myself, like, how did I get myself in this situation, right? And the reason I'm bringing up some of these types of suffering that we deal with on an individual level is because there's also gradations of this, right? Like I said, there's getting old and getting pains. And then there's something like poison oak. You accidentally touch the wrong plant. You can only be so mad at yourself. But then there's something like drinking excessively, right? I've had times where I drank just a ridiculous amount of beers, hanging out with people late at night, and wake up just with the worst pounding headache ever the next day. And the feeling there is like, this is just stupid because this was unnecessary. It'd be one thing if I was 85 years old and my back's hurting because I'm old and I've been working my whole life. Another thing if I'm 80 years old, my back's hurting because I got some poison oak. And it's another thing if I'm 80 years old and my back's hurting because I drink whiskey every night, a whole bottle. There's a point at which the suffering that we're experiencing is excessive because we've pushed things too far, or we've done things that are just stupid. They're abusive, right? And so I think when we think about how natural law works, suffering is one of the ways that the universe kind of has to let us know when we're going too far, when we're pushing things too far, when we've stayed up too late, when we drank too much. And so I think we can relate that to all of humanity. And we're like a bunch of drunks right now. We've been doing too much humanity drinking of the punch, so to speak. But I've gone on a bit. Go ahead, Leslie.
Well, a couple of thoughts. Was it that if we choose our hardship, if we're choosing our suffering, or we're going into something voluntarily and willingly, the suffering is a lot, I would say, maybe easier to bear, or there's a different mindset in terms of our empowerment when we're choosing. And I think that's the difference. That's a big difference with the manufactured suffering, is that where we are not choosing that it's being imposed or forced upon us, which is a violation of our freedom, of our rights, to choose. And that is I would say, a harder suffering to bear. But both kinds of suffering can motivate you, right? Because our bodies, right, have pain receptors, and they are necessary for our survival. Because if we don't know that, that we're touching something hot, we'll get burned. So if you have diabetes and you have neuropathy in your toes, you're at risk of losing your toes, right? So some degree of pain or suffering is an indicator, it's a communicator of nature to alert us to make a change. So, suffering from, let's say, poison oak is teaching us something about a plant, right? That then we can make choices to avoid. And when we have the ability to make a choice to avoid suffering, or we choose it, like a cold plunge, right, for a higher benefit, then it is a whole different experience than when, things are being forced upon us. But it also can be a motivator to defend ourselves. Right?
I had something to add. Now I've kind of formulated my thoughts, if I may jump in. The idea of manufactured suffering is kind of putting me in this mindset of like, if you're dealing with a large group of people, or it doesn't matter the size of group, I guess, but if these people are suffering, if you're doing that to them, then they're operating at like a low vibration of consciousness. they're really down there, and it just kind of brings to mind the idea, like I've been doing a lot of research and the presentations and everything that are coming up in the fall for seed, and mine being about fear. And if you're in pain, if you're suffering, and that you're not able to kind of you're just not operating at a very high level of consciousness. And I guess that's kind of like what I wanted to add in at this point.
Well, I think that's key, James, because the vast majority of human beings on the planet right now are in some state of lower mentality. I mean, they're struggling with levels of suffering, because if they weren't and their mind was clear and they were able to see the big picture, they wouldn't let all these unconscionable things continue. They wouldn't let children be kidnapped and raped on a mass scale. They wouldn't let people, you know what I mean? When you think about the amount of money that exists in some of these pockets in the world, it's enough money to feed half the planet, you know what I mean? Or all the planet, all the people on the planet could probably be fed by someone like Oprah Winfrey, or, one of these ridiculously wealthy tycoons, right? The money and the resources exist to take a lot better care of everyone, but everyone's not in the shape to receive or know that they even deserve that level of care. And many people don't see themselves as worthy of caring, and they think they deserve the suffering, I think. But I'm going to send it back to you, Will. But I do want to say that one thing you said in the very beginning, Will, is that the way you define suffering is that it's ongoing and extreme. And I think that's important, is defining it in being not just being uncomfortable, but it's cyclical and ongoing, which makes that's what makes suffering so terrible, is that you don't know when it's going to end.
Well, yeah, the actual etymology is to allow, to occur, to continue, to undergo, to endure. So it's you're allowing the pain to continue, the continuous pain that keeps going, because one does not understand the causal factor. So it's very much important to understand the difference between pain and suffering. And what you said, Leslie, absolutely. Life contains pain. Pain is the teacher. If you hurt your ankle, you must push and feel around on the ankle to get a proper diagnosis, right? To understand if it's broke, if it's sprained, if there's a fracture, right? So you need to push on the pain points. This is what, we have these conversations that are triggering for people. We are pushing on the pain points. So pain is a great activator, right? I mean, ice baths, working out, getting in shape, learning lessons. These are all, it's painful, right? But it can be transmuted into wisdom, right? I mean, when we learn more about the pain. Now, if we are ignorant to the pain and we allow it to occur, then we get into suffering. So when I think of something like manufactured suffering, I don't necessarily see that as external forces doing something to people, right? The social engineers are manufacturing suffering. How I interpret that is that the population is allowing the manufactured pain to continue and to occur through ignorance and through their lack of knowledge, right? So, and the social engineers know that if they just keep plowing down these dialectics, these false flags, these operations to create more pain and discomfort, eventually the subconscious mind is going to kick in as a defense mechanism, right? And this is what happens when you go through trauma and the disassociation happens. This is where we get into when the pain gets so unbearable and you are not taking correct action. This is how you get into, you want drug addiction's a good example, right? You want to numb the pain. You want to ignore the pain. You need something to take your mind away from the pain. So substance is probably the most popular. The pharmaceutical industry takes exactly what I said and they run with it, and they turn people's pain and their ignorance into profit. So it really does come down to knowledge. So although, yes, humanity is enslaved, there is a great deal of pain, but I am not suffering from this pain because I am taking action and I'm transmuting the pain in the world and the pain that I'm experiencing in the external environment, and I'm acting upon that, and I'm using that to my benefit of knowledge, to mind, and adapting to it. I am not being the victim. See, this is where suffering comes in, because only when you're suffering, you are a victim. You are doing it to yourself. It's a very victim mentality. Someone that suffers from an ailment, they might not be suffering, although they're experiencing a great deal of pain. They have transmuted that pain into an activator, and they are adapting to it, and they are not in a victim mentality. So it's deep, but it's important. So absolutely, the social engineers are capitalizing on this, and we could take this time period as a great opportunity. I've said this in the past many times, to activate. We do that through the pain that we are experiencing in our own lives and in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the term that I was searching for when I was responding to you, is the social engineering aspect of it all. That group of people, and they've created a bunch of people suffering from Stockholm syndrome. They're actually, these people are okay with it now. You know, it's like it's terrible. What you were saying about pain, I wrote down that, you know, pain, that's a trigger of like the five senses, that we use our five senses to recognize that. Then we can either raise our awareness of it or not. And if we do raise our awareness of it, then that could lead to us learning a way to prevent the pain from happening over and over again the same way. And that is the way out. Now, people that want to not take the way out, the pain is going to lead to suffering, like what you said. The pain is out of control. That suffering is pain out of control. And then, so that's kind of like where we're at in the aggregate of the people here, not here, but you know what I mean, is, you know, they don't know how to stop begging the people, the group of people that are suffering can't stop begging the ones imposing the pain upon them to like, they can't stop begging them for more. They just keep going back for more. They just want more and more. Like we're facing a selection season coming up, and everyone's going to start rallying for their, you know, their guy or whatever. There's probably going to, who knows what we're going to be looking at. You know, it's probably going to be absolute chaos in the streets. It's going to be hell. I don't expect it to be very, you know, very peaceful this next year, but it's a reflection of the amount of suffering that people are going through. This is a manifestation of their subconscious coming out, where it's like a caged beast gritting its teeth, and it's out of control. The cage has been opened, and out comes the beast, and it's growling and frothing at the mouth, looking for something to chew on. And it doesn't. And this is like the way that people act when they're suffering. They just need something to focus in on, and it's almost like they want to do to others what has been done to them, and they don't understand that that's just wrong, you know. And it's that little space in between where it's like the things that their stimulus response or reaction, where that's happening to them, there's a little space in between where like they might go and try to do that, what's going on with them, they might try to do that to others. We have like this much room to intervene and tell them, hey, no, don't do it. You can stop the cycle. You can stand up and say, I'm not going to perpetuate this. Each and every one of us has an opportunity every single day when we're about to kind of have maybe a moment where, hey, we all have emotions, right? Embrace them. Great. Learn them. Don't let them control you. You're in control of the machine, of the boat. You know, I almost said machine, but we're not machines. So we have a very slim margin of, you know, where we can take responsibility for ourselves and not continue putting our shit onto other people, and to stop it, break the cycle.
You know, James, you drive a garbage truck, right?
I do.
I used to work years ago when I first started listening to Mark Passio. I was working at the Superior Court, and I was a maintenance man. And I remember this one gal who had to work one of the front desks. So she's dealing with people that are coming every day who can't pay their ticket. You know, a lot of frustrated people coming to this woman's desk. And she had this poster next to her window on the employee side. And it was all about people going around and dumping their trash on other people. And that's like a very common thing in our society is people aren't aware of the trash they're carrying around. And a lot of this is our addictions. And people do become, like you're saying, cyclically addicted to this stimulus and response of suffering, and then having to fill that hole with something they want to do anyway. Like I'm saying, like drinking or something, right? So you say, oh, I feel like crap. I'm angry. The world hates me. I might as well just drink again. And that fulfills what I actually wanted to do anyway all day, was just get drunk again. And the cyclical nature of this trauma, it just keeps rebirthing itself in our lives as we go around and dump this trash on everybody else around us. And some people gather their energy. They're like energy vampires. And that was what that gal's poster was in that window. It was pointing out how some people go around life dumping their trash at everybody else's place instead of doing what James and us are doing, is going around trying to pick it up and organize it and put it where it belongs, which is not in ourself, not trashing up our thoughts and our ability to think clearly.
The element in there that goes toward that goes toward the manufactured suffering part of this conversation is the people's inability to use that small margin to stop the cycle. That inability is the manufactured element. A lot of people go through life not even learning how to stop themselves from projecting their own shit onto other people's plates. And that in my opinion is manufactured into people in order to create this cyclical suffering wheel that keeps going around and around and around, churning people under as it goes. So with that, I'll pass the conch to the next person.
I know Leslie's got something to say.
Well, I was thinking about how we all need to learn how to pick up our trash and process our trash as we go along, which means, the residues of our suffering, right? So when we are in prolonged discomfort and the load of hardship increases incrementally, there's a lot of fallout that needs processing. A lot of negative, a lot of emotions. I'm not going to call them negative or positive, but there's like an inability and a lack of knowledge that people have of how to process and rid themselves of this emotional burden that is associated with their suffering. So this, every 4-year ritual is, in a weird way, people's attempt. They're thinking, we want to stop our suffering, and we're going to find a new guy who's going to, or leader who's going to come and stop our suffering for us. So it's a very externalized locus of control. And so we can look at suffering from the standpoint of the locus of control, which is kind of where I started. It's like, are we choosing? We could choose to march across, the desert and have, to get to the other side to rescue our child or something, right? Like, and whatever suffering comes, we can deal with that because we're empowered in that mission, that goal, that focus, what's really important, right? But a lot of times people don't have an internal locus of control or a sense of power. And so it's externalized. And then that leaves people vulnerable to that manipulation and that overwhelm, the overwhelm of all the things that they feel like they have no control over. And the social engineers understand the human trauma response. They understand how our nervous systems work. And so when they're throwing like 1,000 different stressors on us and, creating economic hardship and, creating more penalties and fees, and the utilities go, all these life stressors become, in a way, potentially a source of suffering. People's locus of control makes all the difference, right? As to whether or not they feel able to take the reins and take the action, right? And change their thoughts. And like all of this experience we have so much more control over than most people realize. But when we're overwhelmed, when our system is overwhelmed and it shuts down into freeze response, then we're not going to feel powerful. We're not going to have clarity. We're not going to feel the feelings that would normally motivate us or inform us. We're going to be, more than likely, if we're feeling helpless or powerless, going to be turning to those, things like addictions and sensory pleasures and things that will be a distraction. You're also, when you're in a trauma response, your empathy decreases, your ability to think of others and seeing big picture patterns decreases, and it very much becomes a narcissistic point of view, right? And that's kind of what you're describing, James.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely puts the blinders on. It makes people focus, like super hyper focused on just like the 5 feet in front of them.
Yep.
And that's counterproductive.
Especially when the 5 feet in front of us is a hole we've been digging for the past few hundred years.
Yeah, and that hole is 6 feet deep.
Yeah, and basically the answer is everybody's got a shovel in their hand, right? And they say, oh, there's a problem. We need to try to dig it away. It's like, well, this is an ever-expanding hole, and none of us can even see the sun anymore. Maybe we should put the shovels down, and when you suggest that, people are ready to come after you and hit you with the shovel, Mm-hmm. They want to shove the shovel down your throat. And the way that works out for me is saying, hey, we should stop, contributing to government. We should start realizing that these systems that we have in place, these written laws, are actually binding us to evil because they're teaching us that it's okay to steal and to convince our children that it's okay to steal from one another. We need to really reevaluate this whole system, which means doing away with the shovels. And people, that's all they know since they're born is shoveling, making it deeper. And right now you're seeing this in the political scheme where a lot of people are really kind of realizing that this control matrix is a fucked situation, but they're still totally bound to politics as the solution. And they're going back and forth and they're seeing all this terrible, ridiculous stuff on every political scheme. And even a lot more people I'm hearing are saying, I don't know about the left or the right, which is good, but they're still having trouble seeing past the shovel from my point of view. Will,
Chris,
you want to jump off on that?
It'll all work out as long as we can get the right guy in there.
We just need a bigger shovel.
Exactly.
One that's shaped like this.
Yeah, I've been hearing that a lot as well. People are, they claim to be middle on the political spectrum. This is why it is vital right now for people to talk about the fundamentals, right? Objective morality, natural law, natural rights. Great opportunity to talk to these type of people about these kind of topics. The majority of people are in negative knowledge, but that stems from their fear, the primal fears. This is where it stems from, mainly the fear of death. And here's the reality, right? We are going to go through some serious growing pains to evolve through to higher consciousness. That's just a fact. People are going to die. That's a fact. Even on the pathway to higher evolution, that's going to happen because you're going to have those people that are so ensconced in fear and they're clinging onto it like a security blanket. They're going to die from that. And so be it. We need to get over this fear of death. That is going to happen. This is all about nature. When you plant trees, there was actually a project done by some scientists. I think this was in the early 90s. It was called Biosphere. And they wanted to replicate an ecosystem. and they planted trees, and all the trees, when they hit maturity, they fell over and they were done. They broke at the root system and they fell over. The scientists were like, what the hell? We've created the perfect conditions. Why are the trees falling down? It was because the trees didn't have wind. Trees need the force, the pain, wind, aggressive wind, and that creates stress wood, which stress wood is in the core of the tree. And that pain and that stress develops a strong root system. So when the trees hit maturity, they are strong. So we need to understand that what we're going through right now is going to be painful. The choice is up to us if we are going to suffer from what is going on. And a lot of people are going to choose that suffering. So time management is very important. When we're doing the one great work, we're going public, we're talking about objective morality and the illegitimacy of government and the belief in human authority. We're going to get people that are absolutely going to be fearful of these ideas and this truth, right? That they're not going to resonate and they're not going to be ready. And so be it, you move on. It's not about, I hear this a lot in the truth community, in the freedom community. People want to reach certain individuals. I can't reach my brother. I can't reach my parents. Focus on your work and the message. Sharpen the sword, your rhetoric, and increase that message to as many people as many people as possible. And the veracity and the methodology of how you communicate, focus on that, because those that are ready to release that fear will do that. They will find that. They will resonate with the frequency of what you're putting out there, and they will gravitate to you. And we are creating nodes, network nodes of truth. And this is what we're doing. And so my point is to transmute the pain.
Yeah. There's like a great fear of suffering, right? People
Sure.
are very motivated by that fear of suffering. And yet, like the tree needing the wind, our bodies, in order to build muscle, we need gravity. We need resistance. If you want to build strength, you need to have resistance against your muscles. And so, a lot of that is about the attitude and our mindset about what we're experiencing. And, and the more that we come to peace with suffering and learn to embrace it, it's like, giving birth, when I was having, the labor pains, I didn't have a viewpoint of fear of the pain, and I didn't see it as pain in a way. And I embraced it and I breathed into it in an acceptance, which made it not be pain, although it was painful, right? So we can take these experiences, these correspondences, and apply them to our spirit, because suffering is a test of our spirit. It is an opportunity to hone our spirit, to sharpen our blade, and it's also a test of moral clarity. And we need it more than ever when it comes to decreasing the suffering, and to determine, like, what do we do with our suffering with our character, because, and how do we, who do we want to be in the face of suffering? We get to choose.
Leslie, I'm glad you brought up the birth trauma. There was a really good commenter, and she's been interacting in the Telegram chat, One Great Work Warrior Telegram chat. If you haven't been over there, folks, recommend to join. There's a lot of good conversation going on. And I'm going to go ahead and post it here in the comments. It's kind of a long thing she wrote, but it's very well, some good thoughts. So I'm going to read it. She says, "Great debate. And I wish I could have been part of the dialogue. I would have elaborated on the birth trauma, which is society reinforces with ritual mind throughout life. The birth trauma is deeply anchored as it marks the separation of the cosmic womb and the subconsciousness need to go back to it. And because it is only possible to go back to the cosmic womb when dying, the tendency to cause a lack of existential purpose and therefore extra suffering in our materialistic realm. This issue is compounded by two aspects. Number one, the side effect of religious doctrines on purpose, claiming that redemption is external while it emanates from within. And number two, money causes a great disconnect between individuals as it induces societal competition, preventing individuals from seeing the wholeness of life. And this promotes various levels of polarities, fragmenting society even further. There lies the recipe for manufacturing suffering. Of course, a better understanding of the principle of polarity and other hermetic laws is key to healing. You know, I'm always impressed by the people that follow the show and the people that come in here and comment. And you know, we're like a breed of philosophers. We're trying to understand this world. It's confusing. You know, like why are we experiencing so much suffering? You know, like birth. It can be fairly traumatic. I don't think it needs to be as traumatic as it is in our modern society. Sarah Cross was pointing out, our medical institutions are one of the worst progenitors or people generating more suffering through the way that children are born. But that being said, there is this tendency to kind of want to go back to the warm womb and to be safe. And many of us were separated from our mother right at birth and have been separated from our tribes and our legacy of generations of elders through various means of wars, persecution. Religions have busted up and fragmented any chance of strong communities and family units in the modern society. And that puts us at a huge disadvantage. And that's why I personally really spend a lot of time promoting the idea of creating networks, creating our small communities, groups. I don't like the term group so much, but we're a group, you know, that created the Funnel Conference, that created, James Cordner created the Shattering the Illusion Conference. It brought together an incredible group of minds, and it opened up the doors and the possibilities for a lot of other presentations and realizations to be made. So we're showing examples of how to shatter through this glass, this veil of pain, of suffering that says you have to suffer, you have to be busted apart, you can't have a community. We need to rebuild those things ourselves by being the stoic human beings that are able to kind of rise above and be able to see a certain level of pain and suffering as that's what makes me a fucking hero, because I don't give up when a bunch of things are pointed at me that are trying to scare me. I'm not easily scared. I'll come back the next life if it takes it, or the one after, or maybe this is my 100th one. I don't care. You know, I like that attitude. And I think that's what, you know, my dad he grew up in the Midwest, and he used to tell me about farmers. And so I grew up wanting to be tough like my dad, you know, so I've never been afraid of digging or carrying wood or doing hard work, because I thought, well, if anything, I'm going to get a workout and I'm going to get tougher for it. And that's going to make me have a stronger will. And, you know, now I got a stronger will right below me in the screen.
Well said. Yeah, that was a great comment by the woman in the Telegram chat too. You know, I wanted to say something about birth. This is a great example. It is traumatic on purpose because it creates the opportunity for the trauma bond between the child and the mother. That's what it's supposed to do. The birthing process is traumatic for the baby, right? But then it builds that strong connection. It's like the wind for the tree. So, but of course, in modern, you know, society, by design, by manufactured, right? Manufactured suffering, manufactured trauma. But, you know, the individual, obviously the parents are the ones that are allowing this, and they are giving birth in an inverted, unnatural way, which creates negative trauma, right? So really important. I agree with you on community. I think it's vital, especially now more than ever. I mean, in the realm of objective morality and natural law. That's why I use the word node. This is what a node is. All right. When you think of a node, even on a tree, that node can propagate to another tree. You can clip it and you can graph it, or you can soak it in water and it will grow roots again. This is what we need to do. This is kind of how we amplify the voice of truth and the message of freedom. We create nodes, meaning that we have a group, and then Chris goes off and he kind of starts his own group of people, the One Great Workers, and James and Leslie. I mean, that continues and it unites us under a banner of nature. And it's extremely important that we do this and we unify. And, unity is in community. So I tell you what, the social engineers are very much unified, right? From the outside, from the exoteric, everything looks like it's separated. Oh, the media, the military, the countries, it's all separate entities. Nope, it's all one.
Yep.
And it works. It works together. It just puts off the illusion of separation.
It's purposefully compartmentalized in order to obfuscate and confuse the general public into thinking that everything isn't the way that it really is.
Exactly.
The puppet masters, the man behind the curtain is back there doing what he's doing, pulling levers and playing with strings and all that crazy stuff, Wizard of Oz style. And people just can't see through it.
In a way, that's
why we're suffering.
Those movies, James, like they actually, create these silly myths of these one evil guy, taking over the world, like, Cobra in G.I. Joe, or, Dr. Evil, right? It's these characters that, right, $1 million. It's these kind of guys that when we start to see, like when Will's talking about, when you step back and you start to see the pyramid of evil, that it is unified, and there is a huge conspiracy, a worldwide conspiracy to own your mind and to own your resources. People are like, oh, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. It's not like a movie. There's not one evil people trying to rule the world. Like we can't see reality for what it is, because we're going to get teased. And we don't want to be the weird one, the conspiracy theorist guy, like, that they've been making fun of in these TV shows and movies for years, creating this archetype so they can, or I don't know if archetype's the right word, but they've created this stereotype, this silly character, so that they can make fun of it and call us that, right?
I think that you're spot on. I think it could be an archetype for sure. It's just a stereotype might even, apply as well. But yeah, I mean, it's the idea that, that's just what happens in the movies. It's like the idea of art imitating life has never, ever crossed these people's minds. And this is, again, like a big part of like the why are we suffering? Because people don't open themselves up to the possibilities that the possibility that perhaps things are being controlled like a big machine, and perhaps we don't get the consent that you think that you get by casting your vote and picking your guy. Perhaps it doesn't work that way. Perhaps they're not elected, they're selected. Things like that. Just to bring it back to that example, it's a terrible thing. I mean, we gotta figure out a way. First of all, we gotta figure out a way to talk to these people and to at least get them to see one thing. That's the biggest struggle. And we can shout into the void, doing this online and everything, and make like a clear, concise 5-minute, thing, whatever, and give it to people. That might help. They can process at their own speed or whatever. I'm sorry, but it just, at what point do you just like give up on someone? It just sucks. That's a terrible question to have to ask.
I liked what Will said. It's like, to take your focus off into particular people, but to just put the energy out there anyway, do the work. And, there's an element here of, I guess you would call faith, right? And recognizing that the seeds we're planting are going to take time to germinate and become plants. And so yet we are here doing it anyway. It's the work that I do. I'm a mental health counselor, and I've worked with kids, like teenagers, let's say, and thinking like, I can't tell like if anything I'm doing is really making an impact. But I recognize that even raising my own children, at times it seems like I'm in the dark, but then I see the fruits of my labor later. Right. And I think that that's the mindset to have, is like, we're planting these seeds and we need to know, because it is right. And my experience with talking to a lot of different people is there are a lot of people who kind of get a lot of what we're saying, but they don't fully get it understanding of government, because it's so scary, right? But they don't know what to do, right? They're people feeling very trapped. And I think that's where we can help people is to see paths that they can take individually from wherever they're at. And I think that the unity of community is a really important thing, because people are very desperate, I think, like even those that choose to live very isolated lives suffer because of their isolation, and that there's a basic need for, people are at different stages of understanding and acceptance. And so we're going to be, all of us, speaking at to different levels, and people will be drawn. None of us are going to hit everybody, but I wanted to speak to a couple of things. The scarcity mentality that is really an issue at play here, and that people are so immersed in themselves as 5 sensory beings, and losing their connection to spirit, to themselves as spirit, to themselves as something more than, a 5D, or 5 sensory human, right? That there's something beyond. And when people start to realize that they are this connected to source, then there are new possibilities, for have hope, right? For a quality of life and something outside of this that we're living in. And safety then becomes understood in a different way, where it's not the government keeping us safe or the, something external to us, but recognizing that safety is a biological state. But safety is something that we can learn to create it within our own bodies. Even in an unsafe environment, we can develop that sense of safety in our biological state. And community is definitely, aligned community is definitely one way to help promote that.
Absolutely. Part of my hope is that, one thing I really loved in the funnel conference was we had this incredible camaraderie between those of us who have done the speaking thing and content creating thing. On the One Great Work Network, we see this incredible camaraderie in autonomy. I get this, there are people like us who've been trying to speak out on matters of truth and freedom and put ourselves into many uncomfortable situations. And when you're alone, that is so scary. You feel like you're surrounded by people that want to kick you out. Basically, I don't know how many times I've had someone say, if you don't like it, move somewhere else, that kind of thing. But then you meet people like James Cordner, Leslie Powers, Will Keller, and I could just name all these other people that we've met in this community. And we realize that we have this tribe forming of people that really care about what's right. Maybe we've been existing for many generations, and I see new people popping up all the time that are ready to start speaking up. Just yesterday, one of our good members of our group is ready to start doing presentations and asking me for some tips. And so I encourage people that are listening to recognize that there is a community out there of people that want to help support the work of others who are trying to teach natural law, who are trying to help people understand the difference between right and wrong. And that there is a support system now. There didn't not used to be much of one, but we're building that day by day. And it's up to you, whoever's listening, to help be part of that process.
Do you guys know what the bystander effect is? I'm assuming you all do.
The bystander effect?
Define it for us.
The bystander effect. I can describe it. Maybe a definition. My description could be the definition.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Picture a circle, 10 people in a circle. In the middle of the circle, there's some atrocious action being done between 2 other people. And the 10 people in the circle all know that what's going on in the middle is wrong. But everyone's too afraid to speak up. They're just waiting for they're waiting for someone else to be the first one to speak up. And then once that first person speaks up, then the other 9 are like, yeah, this is wrong. We got to put a stop to this. That's what we're experiencing. So this is why speaking up is paramount. That's the first and most peaceful thing that anyone can do. None of us would have met if one of us didn't start speaking up. All right, us four here. It was our ability to speak about the wrong action that we see going on in the world that brought us together. Chris, you said you might have felt alone. Then I felt the same way. I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to start speaking up. I can't keep quiet anymore. And look where, from my own experience, it's led me here to be here with you guys tonight. You spoke up. You just told us about this a newcomer that's ready to jump in and do some presentations and whatever. Confidence breeds confidence. People see confidence in us. They go, it is possible, and they want to do it themselves. They no longer feel alone. And that's why it's like, this is why speaking is the most important thing to do. And the first thing that we do. And yeah, Sarah's right. Everyone's understanding things at different stages, different levels, and whatever. Which is why it's so important to keep in mind to speak from your own level of understanding. That's going to resonate with other people that are at the same as you. Maybe they're even further down the path than you. They still understand what you're saying, whatever. It's all good. But that's why, the only change that's ever going to happen, if we're going to change this path that we're on collectively, because honestly, I don't see how, according to the principles of natural law, how anyone can deny that we're kind of in this, together, is through speech. So that's what I implore people to do, is that if you know that something is wrong, figure it out, run it through the trivium, find a way to describe it. Use find a way to describe the problem.
Yeah.
And then speak about it. Put it out there. Say, hey, I witnessed this thing. I don't know what
or ask for help
yeah.
if you can't describe
Yeah.
it. There's
Yeah.
other people out there, right? You got to ask, though, otherwise they probably won't say anything.
And just creative expression in general, right?
Yeah.
Art.
Yeah. If we're staying silent, then the problems never get solved. They perpetuate. Yeah. That's why I say that speech is the most peaceful resolution to all of this, is because we do. And my understanding as it is right now, and maybe I don't understand it completely, but where I'm at right now, it seems that no matter what we do, there is, if we're going to talk about voluntarism and consensual relationships, and that being a part of natural law and all of these principles combined to kind of lead you to this area, then we do kind of live in a system of the majority rules type of thing. Even in nature, we kind of have these these self assembling systems, alliteration aside, but these are based on a majority of people coming together and saying, this is what we want to do in this area. I've even heard people like Mark Passio say, we don't need 100% of people, we need 51% of people. We need 50.1% of people to understand this to make an actual difference. So based on that, I kind of think that it is kind of like a majority rules type of situation. I don't really remember where I was going with that, but I think that it had to do something with like consent and just kind of making sure that people kind of start speaking up about it, because that's where it was. It was the more people that start speaking up, the more people are going to get rid of that bystander effect. Mm-hmm. And they're going to understand that, hey, I'm not everyone. That bystander effect, if I'm repeating myself, I apologize, but that bystander effect only happens when everybody thinks that they're alone.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's that interesting, you're making me think about, there's that interesting video. There's probably more than one now, but there was one real famous song that came out recently and that was going around the internet, and it's about, not in this town, try that in this town type of thing, right?
Jason Aldean. Yep.
Yeah. And you're seeing kind of some of these thoughts, because what I've noticed is, I noticed in the chat, Sarah was bringing up the masks, and that was a big part of the battle for me too. And when I travel across California, we have a wide variety here in California of different types of geographical areas, from city to rural. And so I came from a fairly more populated area, and then I moved a couple times and I went into some more rural areas, and I really drove out there sometimes to see if I could find places where people weren't acting like the way they were in the city areas. And there was a big difference. And I really drew the conclusion myself that I think the more people are used to being self-sufficient and relying on their community, the quicker they're going to be to rise up when the tyranny comes in, because they're like, hey, wait a second, we don't even need you guys, from the outside. We're used to changing our own tires and growing our own food and building our own houses. We don't need someone from the outside to come in and tell us how to live or what to put on our face, type of thing. And I think the more that small groups of people who live locally form that type of mentality, the more strong and the more we have an ability in the physical world to stand against tyranny. But right now, in the physical world, we're so vastly outnumbered that the battle is here on the psychological realm. We're trying to convince people to think for themselves, to rise up within their own being, to recognize that the world of material things is a result of the mental world. And so we need to start with the principles and what is truly right and wrong, and what's the meaning behind what we're doing. Why are we doing what we're doing? When we are able to answer those questions as community, as small groups, then we know how to handle all these weird angles they might come at us with, various tricky dialectics and false flags and whatever else, medical tricks aren't going to work on a strong people that understand the fundamentals. And so that's where the war is at right now. And there's people out there right now in the world that aren't suffering, that are doing terrible things. And I think that's part of where the confusion comes from in the world, is that people see that some of these rich oligarchs and wealthy families that are Satanists have been pulling it off, and they're on top. Why is that? Why aren't they suffering? I mean, it's hard to understand on the personal level, because this stuff takes a while.
Well, do you think that it could be like kind of a perception type of thing? Like they could actually be suffering, they just don't know it. Like, because they're never going to live the life that we have the opportunity to live because they're so hell-bent on controlling other people. So in a way, couldn't that be a form of suffering where they're jealous? That's one of the things that leads them to do the things that they do, is they're psychopaths. They're jealous of our ability to have emotions and feel. And they're fucking sociopathic losers who don't know any better.
And fear of losing their wealth
addicted.
and their power, or being found out for their
To me, that sounds like a
immoralities.
terrible life.
Yeah.
That sounds like suffering on to a degree in which I would never understand. I have my own superficial suffering, but that's some deep spiritual suffering.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't mean I pity them. Don't get it twisted. That does not mean I feel bad for people that do that kind of thing. They need to learn their lesson. They want to go the way of maximum pain, death by 1,000 paper cuts. Go for it, But for real, they're probably suffering worse than anybody. They want to,
Or
and they
will later.
But their motivator, I think, is that they want to drag other people down into the muck with them, and they want to. It's like a sadomasochist or some sort of sadist mentality, right? Where like I'm gonna be happy when everyone else is at the same level of suffering as I am. And that's kind of, I think, where the plane of their mentality operates, is that in that area, that little space there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
James, thanks for, go ahead, Will. And then after that, let's welcome Brandon. Thanks for joining us, Brandon.
Hey,
Go ahead, Will.
Brandon.
I was going to say, to just kind of follow up with what James was saying, that's also why their infatuation with, living forever in the material world, right? They want to stay in the physical realm because they do not want to deal with the reconnection with source and that whole process, right? It's agonizing for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And just bringing it back to the topic of tonight with manufactured suffering, this is what the social engineers want. They want people to identify with their suffering, to identify with their oppressors, to become that suffering, right? Because it's just like an infection. It just spreads, and they want to infect everyone else.
And then
that's
give you
what
the
their goal
solution.
is.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt it. I just wanted to add,
exactly.
and then to
give them
give you the solution to it.
You're absolutely right.
Hi, Brandon Spencer. It's good to see you, brother.
Another hero.
My man.
In our
What's
midst.
up, my
Howdy,
man?
howdy. Can y'all hear me good?
Yeah, you're coming in good.
All right, good. I just got back in town, so I have to set up all my stuff again. What's going on?
Great. Yeah, it's like we're the conversation we did, Brandon, with the Warriors, I just saw a lot of good comments out there, and a couple people said, hey, I would like to be a part of that. And so I said, well, let's continue this conversation. Let's keep it going, and let's bring in anybody that wants to come on in. And we had some pretty amazing individuals show up today, and I think we're going to continue this conversation next week as well as my plan. But you got any thoughts jumping in there, Brandon?
Well, I just wanted to jump in because I saw all of these wonderful guests. I was like, man, I just want to, come in and just say, what's up? Because I was on another her work meeting. I'm like, hurry up, because I wanted to help jump in this. And then I'm not familiar, with everything that was said because I had it on mute, but I was just kind of, help checking the chat. But I just wanted to help jump in and show my support. And I want to thank everybody that checked out that video because it did have a lot of, heavy hitting things. And I think people really enjoyed it because that is a topic that does have reaches all because we have all experienced the suffering. And, we all want to see the world become a better place, but it really does start off with the individual. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. And also too, that Da Vinci Resolve video kind of pushes into that too, because people want to, stop this suffering. That's what we're all trying to do by putting out content, and trying to educate people and trying to teach them, hell about natural law, about shadow work, so that Da Vinci Resolve video should be another tool that can help people, as far as getting this message out to, to stop this manufactured suffering. So I just wanted to show my love and support, and I love everyone's information and videos here, and I would stand alongside of each and every one of y'all in any battle and war. So
And
Thanks,
you are,
Brandon.
brother. Appreciate you and all your work,
Yeah,
man.
for sure.
thank you.
Yeah.
Some very you folks inspire me much, and I think if we're inspiring each other that much, there must be folks out there who are also being inspired. And this is an opportunity to come on these shows with people, to have these conversations, because the more we keep the ball rolling, it builds. Each person builds on the other, and a team does not have to be the way people think it does in the past. We can be decentralized, and we can be very strong. In fact, imagine a military that had no leader that was deadly from every angle, and that's what nature is. Nature doesn't need to have one person in charge. There's not one lion who's in charge of the jungle. That's just not the way things work in reality. And when humans try to form this hierarchical, top down, do it or else kind of programming, it's going to create a lot of problems, and someone's going to suffer. Unluckily, what seems to happen is with this pyramid kind of structure that we've set up is the people on the bottom of the pyramid take the most weight and seem to suffer the most. And so that, really leads to a lot more suffering than is really necessary.
Sarah.
We got Sarah Cross joining us too. That's fantastic. Thanks for joining us.
Something that just came to mind was, Will, you were telling that story about the trees falling over. And now I'm thinking about what Chris just said with like the coercive measures that these controllers, this controlling class wants to take. And I'm kind of juxtaposing that to the idea of like living according to nature. And that's what's going to grow our roots. And the wind is the coercive measures. And if we're living according to nature, then our roots are going to be able to be firmly planted in the ground. We're going to be able to stand strong, and that wind is not going to be able to push us over.
And a tree, what helps it to withstand the wind is its flexibility. The deeply rooted, they're the deeply planted roots, but also the amount of movement and flexibility that the branches have, right? So it's a lesson in not being too rigid and not being unrooted, right? And not being too weak.
There's an elasticity, if that's the proper word for it, but a flexibility to it.
Yes.
And balance, right? Within that flexibility is balance. I'm really curious to hear from Sarah. We got your sound coming in. Want to do a check?
Can you Can you hear it okay?
Yeah, I hear
you're
you great.
coming
Yeah.
through.
I'm on
Awesome.
I'm on my little headphones.
Yeah. Sarah, I wanted to highlight a comment you made about, a lot of the manufactured suffering is coming from the medical system. And, and I think that's very true. And what these things we're talking about, like it's, people are afraid. They're afraid of being sick. They're afraid of pain, right? And then, we have this manufactured solution, which actually perpetuates in many ways the suffering and the pain, like the medical system. And
There's it's an entire industry, and I only know that because I've been in it since birth. So it is an entire industry designed to, well, the idea is to heal the sick. And that's what I believe a lot of the people who like most of the nurses that I've worked with, the people on the bottom rung, like that's their genuine feeling for the most part, because I've met hundreds of them. And they're not all great, but there is that genuine, but it is this business that's been created, and now it's a generational issue with that, is the way that I feel about it. So I would say that it is a business, the medical industry, and the way it creates that kind of suffering.
yeah.
Cut, burn, and poison is methodologies of the modern medical system, and it's more of a religion than it is science. So
yeah,
often.
I know people who are absolutely married to it. It's hook, line, and sinker. And the bigger issue how I see it as the medical industry being a physical factor of creating suffering with people is that it starts at conception. So you have like a mother who goes in and sees a doctor. What does the doctor do immediately? Fill them up full of all kinds of medication and scans and all kinds of things. And that has nothing to do with necessarily whatever the mother is already on before. So they don't just take them off of that. So that already is creating biological confusion or defection within a growing fetus. So that doesn't help when then you are born and then you're raised in a society that also kind of creates all of that.
And hides the truth of our natural healing power, right?
Yes.
And the healing power, people are afraid to not go to the doctor, right? And afraid of relying on those things that we've not been experiencing from birth, right? So we have a lot of retraining to do around the healing powers that we have. And we have some people in our network like Patty Lager, who's teaching a lot about healthy diet and true health hygiene. And
and she's great. I watch her a lot.
Yeah, she's fantastic. What's more fundamental than the body, the mind, the elementary? And this is what modern society wants to say, that the human being is just a meat suit, a machine. A human being is a process. That's what that is. And that process can go many different ways. So this is why they focus so much. They put so much attention and resources into the elements, the elementary, is because, I mean, mind, body, spirit, if you can break those, if you can restrict or inhibit those, then it's a wrap.
Yep. And I mean, think about how easy it is if you get it. If you get to that while a fetus is first developing in the womb, it's going to just be easier and easier from there.
Yeah.
It's like some Brave New World type of stuff,
Yep.
I've been looking at, I don't often watch TV, but every once in a while I get a glimpse of it. I'll be at someone's house or they'll be playing it on a restaurant or something. And these commercials they put out for the latest drug. A lot of them now, they're like people rock climbing or they're kayaking down a river, and they say all you need is radbadavin, and that's going to solve your constipation. Although on the side, it might also cause
And death.
severe headaches,
Yeah.
vomiting, your liver coming out of your nose. You know, it's like we're just basically telling you right out front that we're going to create all this terrible suffering for you, and we might solve one little problem. And you know, your dream is you're going to be out in nature, which is not where people are watching this. They're watching it from their couch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
and
watching it from the lazy boy.
the new one that you hear on these drug commercials is tell your doctor if you've been vaccinated. And like they're saying it on these drug commercials. It's like, you know, it's always been like, oh, if you've had heart problems, if you have, you know, this, that, or the other thing, it's never been vaccinated. Geez, I wonder what that brought about.
I know.
I was thinking of what Sarah was saying about, and you know, a lot of things I like to focus on is like the medical industry, like making drug addicts, you know, and through prescription opioids and amphetamines mainly. And I mean, these people are in cahoots with, you know, we talked earlier about the compartmentalization of much of these industries and everything and how they're actually intertwined. This is a good example. The education system, it's a prime focus of my work. I'm sorry to go there, but the education system being in league with the medical industry, getting these kids on drugs that turn them into drug addicts, you know, amphetamines in particular. There's other SSRIs that do such, like I will say, irreparable damage to young minds, you know, and it's a fucking shame. You know, it's amphetamines in particular, though, like they get people hooked on cocaine, you know, like little kids. It's like their brains get tuned to be like, oh, very super receptive and responsive to cocaine if they ever come in contact.
Even sugar.
Well, sugar, that's the first gateway drug.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing. Like, you know, that's
and
a gateway drug.
Plastics in our body causing hormonal problems.
Yeah. And
endocrine
chemicals
system
in the water
blockers.
turning the friggin' frogs.
Ritalin.
And the metals that are in our body too. All
heavy
the
metals,
you know
yeah.
toxic metals, yep, and also that are in our brains, you know, causing brain atrophy, you know, screwing up people's neocortex. You know, so there's a reason why a lot of people can't understand this information. You know, why that that moral compass isn't properly working, because that neocortex is affected by high traces of aluminum and other traces of metal within the brain, and our environment is polluted with all these metals. So it is causing an effect in people's mental faculties.
Neurotoxic.
Yeah.
And when we're in a like this kind of fight or flight mode, or we're in a state of suffering, I mean, I think all of us have in some way or another experienced some kind of major physical suffering where we're not in the best shape. And what we can remember, I think of a time when I had poison oak really bad all over me. Like, it's really hard to get my mind away from what I'm dealing with. This pain, this itchiness, this frustration. How long is it going to last? There's not a lot of room left in the mind for imagining a better world for humanity, because I'm so focused on this problem I'm having in my own physical body. So we got people suffering from childhood trauma through the educational system, through all the abuse from the medical system. We got the media constantly hitting these children with sexuality that they don't need, unnecessary, kind of like blowing things out of proportion, making them seem crazier and scarier, building up this anxiety. You got like this whole Disney programming convincing you you're going to have this perfect life, and then you're getting the exact opposite. So it's like, Leslie has really woken me up to just how much trauma affects us. But, my thought process all along has been the lack of imagination that I see in people when I say we could have a better world. We don't need to live this way. And they look at me like I'm crazy. Like, well, what's wrong with it? This is the best country there's ever been. and they want to make these kind of statements like, we have the Constitution. They didn't used to have that. You're lucky. Like, just enjoy this stuff. Just suffer with it, okay? This is as good as it gets kind of attitude. And it's lacking that imagination to see that every time in history when somebody was able to work towards something greater, they had a dream. They were able to see a vision that nobody else could see. And that takes effort. It takes will to imagine, to think about how things could be, about what we want to see in the future, not instead of what it's probably going to be, And
John,
go ahead.
John, I just wanted to highlight
yeah.
quote by the Nuss. People are so afraid of death that they will undergo procedures that might cause them to die in order to avoid death. Right? That's the contradiction.
Right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like any organ transplant.
Yeah. Exactly.
They're willing to risk things like chronic rejection problems, and like with getting a brand new organ, you're adding a medical problem, and it's a constant maintenance issue. So, and that it's all about prolonging death is the transplant problem.
What about a Neuralink? That'll solve people's problems. Just put a chip in your brain, and
that's why I see pain as the great teacher. Suffering is self-induced purgatory. Sure, you can learn lessons from suffering, absolutely. But we don't actually need suffering. That's the thing. One can go throughout their whole life and experience pain because it's guaranteed. Pain is guaranteed for sure. You can learn from that pain. Suffering, on the other hand, when I hear people saying, "Oh, the system's never going to change. There's always going to be government. There's always going to be some type of system of control. We need suffering." No, we don't. We don't need suffering. We have the pain. We can learn from that pain, and we can move forward and evolve.
Yep.
The question is, how much suffering are we going to endure before we learn the lesson, right? That's the kind of the key question. And when you get someone that is experiencing continuous pain, which is now suffering, like you were saying, Chris, right? They're not the imagination is shot. They're so fixated on the egoic feeling of what they're going through, right? That they get desperate. This is where the social engineers want people. They want people to be suffering so bad, they're desperate, and they will do anything to ease the suffering. That's that's the state of mind the social engineers want to keep people in.
Yeah, and then the people seek to ease that suffering will thank it's the same people that are oppressing them that are offering them a solution. And then then the people that are getting that, they're going to be like, "Thank you, Massa. Thank you for easing my suffering. Please, can I have some more?"
Exactly.
Has anyone seen Lark and Rose's The Jones Plantation yet? The movie?
No.
I haven't seen it yet. No, I haven't really had a lot of time.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
We should do a watch party.
That would be fun.
Yeah,
I do plan to go and watch it. I've just been really busy, but I will at some point.
Yeah.
I meant to catch you at Pork Fest, but I showed up a day late.
Oh.
I think it's going to be available tomorrow, right?
It's
11th?
available now, actually.
To
purchase. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
I think I did see it online. I saved a link or something so I could go and check it out whenever I have like a few hours to actually do that and give it proper time.
You can purchase it permanent, so you have it permanently too in your collection.
Oh, like a download.
Yeah. There's 3 options.
That's good.
One is the movie itself. One is the movie with the director's commentary, and then there's the movie with the director's commentary and some other conversations with other people.
I'd probably do the permanent one so I could just watch it in my own pace. So I'm kind of like that. I kind of sit on things for a while. But I just wanted to comment what Will and James was talking about with the pain as being a tool. Like, I mean, I agree with all of that. I mean, from my own experience, pain is a teaching tool. And I think I did, I wrote an article up about that, and I got some negative backlash about that. They're like, nah, because they just like can't stand the idea that, you know, maybe they're supposed to actually experience pain to learn some of the lessons they're supposed to be learning. So like, I think it's all very individual and unique for, as far as pain, as far as the individual dealing with pain, and it can be in all different types of formats. And, you know, the suffering, people suffer with pain only because they don't understand how to use pain as that teaching tool. So they just continue to suffer instead of realizing how to like deal with it properly and understand it properly. And then with that, they'll always continue to suffer if they continue to think that pain is something that's bad.
Yeah.
Ignorance, the key factor.
For all of
Between
us.
pain
Yeah.
and suffering, right?
Mhm.
Everyone has their own threshold of pain, and it takes a lot of work to expand it and to be able to deal, because that's what the expansion of your threshold of pain is going to be what allows you one to be able to kind of move forward through this milieu of chaos. And what they want you to do is the self-destruction route, because that's what they thrive off of. But if we can just stand up and say no, and you know, I'm going to deal with this, I'm going to take care of myself. Leslie made a great point earlier about, you know, where truly, you know, who else is responsible for keeping me safe other than myself, right? And like, that's kind of where we need to adjust our mentality to be, is like, where does this pain come from? This kind of metaphysical pain, not so much like, oh, I cut my finger off, or like, oh, I stubbed my toe. Like, you know, that kind of stuff I think is superficial to a degree, right? But when we're talking about, like, you know, the situation at hand, you know, the suffering, the pain of that suffering, it's like, well, where do we start? We start by taking responsibility for ourselves. And if we can do that, well, how are we going to do that? We got to expand our threshold of pain. Yeah, how much can I take? How much can I really take before I have to reach out and ask for help, perhaps? You know, and like, sure, we can all help each other, but I guess my point was, is like, being self-reliant is a clear path forward through the shit, and making sure that we can actually tread that path is quite a task. But I mean, we're truly the only ones responsible for that, is for ourselves, at least. You know, I mean, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of us here that have children. We're responsible for them to a point in their lives where they can carry themselves. Until they can carry themselves, we carry them for them. You know, and that's a very big responsibility. So, not to get too far away from my original point, but like, yeah, I mean, I guess that's, you know, it's kind of like, it's important to kind of stress, you know, that
That's really beautiful, James, because that's where I was going to go. You know, we're going to probably close this up in a few minutes. This has been a great chat, but what I'd really like to do is go through each of us and kind of conclude with us kind of like explaining our personal responsibility, our message to others, actionable. What do we actually do about this problem of manufactured suffering? And you really like already started answering that question, James. You know, taking personal responsibility in your life. You know, I myself, like, it's funny because thinking about pain, like way back in the beginning of this journey, I was kind of like in the prepper place, and I was paranoid that, you know, it was going to be like Mad Max around us by now. I thought that was going to happen like 8 years ago. And, you know, I started by preparing myself by taking cold showers, because I figured, well, there's probably not going to be heat. You know, I better learn how to sleep on the floor too. I started sleeping on a harder ground. I was trying to prepare myself for the future that I thought was coming. And some of these things, you know, that led into me doing the Wim Hof breathing and cold exposure, and certain levels of like studying self-defense. It's just a matter of time till you're gonna do something that's gonna hurt, you know. And I'm totally willing to face pain, and I know I'm going to have certain levels of suffering in the future, but I choose joy personally. And nature is beautiful. and it's out there, and I know how to connect with it. And as shitty as things are going to get, I choose joy. And that's what I'm experiencing, because my focus is helping people. My focus is creating unity, is opening the doors to community, is by being a friend to people around me, regardless of their decisions, and how much faith and trust I put in myself is growing by leaps and bounds every year that goes by, that I see myself doing good works with my time. And I'm proud of what I did last week, and I'm proud of what I did before. And so that's what I would pass to you, is if you can create inside of yourself the hero that you want to be, and be working towards that consistently, whatever small thing you do every day, you can build yourself up to the point where you feel good about yourself. And when you feel good about yourself and you feel joy, then you can expand your mind to, how can I help others? How can I help the world? How can I leave a legacy for not just my children, but other people's children? And so that would be my recommendation to people, is choose joy, but don't shy away from pain, and don't be afraid to suffer, because those are a natural part of this life, and you're going to get some resistance if you choose this path. And James, you want to add anything to yours before I'll have you hand it off to Will when you're done?
So this brings to mind the quote from Hyacinth Voisin, as blessed are those who plant seeds for trees under whose shade they will not sit. To me, that's a very inspiring quote. Seeing how I am a father, I take that very seriously in my life. Pain can be a teacher, suffering can be avoided, but it's up to us to take responsibility for ourselves, and to actually know ourselves, to avoid that suffering, and know how to not participate in actions that are going to lead to the suffering of other people. So with that, I'm James Cordiner. My podcast is called A Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth. My website is freeyourmindne.com. And I look forward to seeing all you beautiful people again sometime soon.
Thanks,
Excellent.
James.
Yeah, I'll say awareness creates choice, right? So aim for the pain. Like, look at yourself and step into your discomfort zone and analyze and contemplate on your triggers and your pain points, right? To see what areas you need to focus on. We mentioned the Jones Plantation. Fantastic film, I'm sure. This is a great opportunity to have a watch party in your local community, right? And then at the end of it, you get up there in front of the people and you express some rhetoric on the belief in human authority, and kind of, this is just one modality to reach people. But I think in the context of pain and suffering, using your own pain into your content, into your message, because what it does, it creates relatable content. And when you have a message or an experience that is relatable to other people, then you develop a connection, and that connection can open up a whole bunch of doors. So as you increase your awareness, so does the opportunities of choice increases, because suffering absolutely is a choice.
Really well said.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I endeavor to be like a tree. I want to have my roots go down very deeply. I want to feed them with nutrient soil, and I want to be flexible and fluid enough to withstand the heavy winds. And I do this through taking responsibility for my life experiences and for the remedies and solutions to the pain and suffering that I'm experiencing, recognizing that it is up to me to take action and to do something, whether it's I need to learn something, or I need to reach out for help, or I need to connect, or I need to, take a vacation, or I need to change up my work schedule, or whatever it is. Ultimately, it's up to me to be, to take that action. And it is up to each of us, to learn about ourselves, to develop deep self-understanding, and to understand how we are being manipulated in this world of manufactured suffering. And if we can understand our system, mind, body, spirit, and how our own potential power in our system is being used against us, or it's being disabled, it's being, falsely blocked and made stagnant, and we have the power to change that. We have the power to unleash this incredible untapped power within us, and together. And so I hold out hope, and I am with Chris on I choose joy, and I feel that by choosing joy, I am claiming my freedom from those who want me to suffer. So
Beautiful.
Yeah, very beautiful. Um, I'll leave on this. What exactly are we creating? What exactly are we constructing? What exactly are we building? People just think that creation just takes form like on a canvas, but our hands, our brains, our minds, our hearts, the objective reality, this world that we all share, that is the real canvas. So what are we really creating? Are our actions still building a world based in coercion, based in slavery, fear, or are our actions contributing to more right action, more freedom, more rights, more understanding, more states of higher consciousness? You see, man is not man if he's not creating. Creation is a part of man. Man is going to create irregardless. So if that creation is conscious creation or unconscious creation, man is still going to create at the end of the day. Now, based on what we choose to create, there's always going to be consequences. And as long as we continue to stay ignorant of man himself and the laws that man operates in, then unfortunately man will continue to create unconsciously. So we have to look at what exactly that we are creating, and we have to elevate our consciousness and raise our level of creation in the form of art, because content creation is just another form of art, like Will has said, many times before. So what exactly are we creating? If we know this knowledge, if we claim to know this stuff, then we have to create an environment and put that stuff back out so others can learn. And that's truly how we are going to stop and alleviate this manufactured suffering. Thank you.
Excellent.
Beautiful. Sarah, you want to finish this off?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I agree with all of that. I couldn't have said that better than how you said that, Brendan. Spirit itself is a creative force. It's an artist by nature. So everything that comes out of us is a creative. If it goes all the way to through thought, motion, and action, it ends up being a creative something, whether it's good or bad. So it's about being responsible for your own thoughts, emotions, and actions, and using the pain to learn how not to create suffering for yourself is very important, and stop trying to hide it under band-aid fixes like opiates and medications and all kinds of go-to modern day fixes that people try to avoid it because they're afraid of feeling bad or sad or whatever, and instead of just being responsible for how they were made.
yeah. Can I close us off with reading the quote that the Nus posted here by
Sure.
Khalil Gibran?
Yeah, that'd be great. Oh, I like that one. Yeah.
Then a woman said, "Speak to us of joy and sorrow." And he answered, "Your joy is your sorrow, unmasked. And the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears." It's very beautiful.
Hey, thanks so much, guys, from joining me tonight. I feel lucky and to know all of you wonderful souls. And I appreciate you coming on the show and making it one of the best shows we've ever done. And we're going to keep up this work. And the podcast will be running again next week, Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific. That's 9 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Is that 7 p.m. Central. And so we'll be back next week, and we're going to continue this discussion a little more because I got a couple other people that wanted to get their 2 cents in as well. And it'll be a lot more than 2 cents. And one last note, I noticed when Leslie said tree and nutrients starts with new tree. So get your new trees on, folks, and feed yourself well and grow your inner soul and be the person you want to be in this world and end evil. And
Chris,
we'll see you next week.
Chris, the Ents were the trees from.
I thought of that too. Yeah, the Lord of the Rings guys. Yeah. All right. Much love, guys. I'm gonna throw on the commercial, and we'll see you next week. And keep the conversation going on social media, and share the show. All right. Much
Thanks,
love,
guys.
friends.
Appreciate you all.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Here goes the commercial.
Peace be with you.
I'm in a prison. I'm in a mental prison, and a physical one at that, and definitely a spiritual one, whether that's recognized at a conscious level or not.
As I wait for my sleep, the situation's got me thinking deep. Will ever the same? And all life is in extinction. Evil creeps in your dreams. Secret teams drawing memes. And the filling in the in-betweens. Mind control for the teens. Now they got you on your knees. I'm making my way through this open maze, but I'm dazed by mass confusion. All the images that they're using.
As the rest race to the tip of the top of the pyramid,
Falling in, to this low level of spiritual awareness, such that these methods can have any effect over us.